always exchanged words with everybody because it didn't matter what anybody was doing in and around the estate here and everywhere else. They all meant a lot to him, and he always took a very personal interest in everything that they were doing.
For years, people believed the biggest royal war was happening between Meghan and the institution she left behind. But what if the deeper story was hiding somewhere else entirely? What if one of the most respected women inside the royal family had been silently carrying a betrayal so personal, so humiliating, and so painful that she simply refused to speak about it? Because according to reports and royal gossip that refuses to disappear, that woman was Sophie. And the reason her name keeps resurfacing whenever Meghan's royal journey is discussed has less to do with headlines and far more to do with something that happened behind closed palace doors. The story begins long before the interviews, long before California, and long before the accusations that would divide the monarchy. It begins inside Frogmore Cottage when Sophie allegedly did something few people were willing to do. She opened the door, not just physically, emotionally, personally, completely. While many royals reportedly kept Meghan at a cautious distance, Sophie supposedly approached her differently. She saw a newcomer entering one of the most difficult institutions in the world and decided to help. She shared painful lessons from her own mistakes. She reportedly revealed how badly she had suffered when trust was misplaced. She explained the dangers hiding behind palace walls. She offered advice that had cost her years of embarrassment, criticism, and recovery to learn. And then something strange happened. Nothing. No follow-up. No relationship. No friendship, no gratitude, at least according to palace insiders. Sophie allegedly watched the connection disappear almost immediately after she had exposed her own vulnerabilities trying to help. And what hurt wasn't an argument. It wasn't a confrontation. It was silence. Cold, the kind of silence that tells someone exactly where they stand without ever speaking a word. But if the silence was painful, what came next was reportedly far worse. As months passed, stories began circulating through royal circles. Private comments, private frustrations, private observations supposedly made by Meghan about the monarchy itself. The whispers were impossible to. Some claimed Meghan viewed many royal traditions as outdated. Others alleged she questioned whether the institution could survive into the future. Whether those reports were accurate or exaggerated hardly mattered anymore, because one thing was becoming obvious. Trust inside the family was eroding, and Sophie was hearing the woman who had devoted years of her life to supporting the crown was suddenly hearing stories that painted a very different picture of the newcomer she had tried to help. Every new rumor reportedly widened the distance. Every fresh account added another crack. And then, palace staff entered the story. That was when things allegedly became impossible to overlook. Staff members who had worked loyally for decades reportedly found themselves struggling under pressure. Complaints surfaced, concerns emerged, stories spread through corridors. Before long, reports of investigations began dominating royal gossip. Official details remained hidden from public view, creating the perfect environment for speculation to explode. The more secretive everything became, the more people assumed something serious had happened. And inside that atmosphere, Sophie reportedly watched trusted employees leave one after another. People she knew, people she respected, people who had survived decades inside the royal machine. Gone, some left quietly, others disappeared from public discussion almost overnight. The palace remained silent. Lawyers became involved. Questions multiplied. Answers became scarce. Whenever information disappears, speculation rushes in to fill the vacuum. And speculation was now moving faster than ever. Then came another deeply uncomfortable development. The accusations, the interviews, the explosive claims that shook the monarchy across the world. Suddenly, the royal family wasn't simply facing criticism from newspapers. The criticism was coming from inside the family itself. Every interview generated another headline. Every headline generated another debate. Every debate created deeper divisions. While millions watched from outside, people inside the institution were reportedly struggling to process what was happening. According to royal insiders, Sophie found certain allegations particularly difficult to accept because they collided so dramatically with the family she believed she knew. Friends allegedly recall her defending certain family members whenever negative stories surfaced. She reportedly viewed some accusations as fundamentally inconsistent with her own experiences after spending years working beside those same people. And nowhere was that tension more visible than in conversations surrounding Catherine and William. As allegations spread globally, palace insiders claim frustration intensified behind the scenes. Some family members reportedly felt they could not respond publicly. Others believed responding would only worsen the situation, so silence became the strategy. But silence has consequences. When nobody speaks, rumors become facts in the public imagination, and that silence created a dangerous vacuum. Because, while the public debated interviews and headlines, another transformation was allegedly taking place. According to sources, Sophie began noticing changes in Harry himself. Friends who once knew him described a growing distance. Relationships became strained, old bonds weakened, familiar connections faded. created. What happened next, according to royal gossip circles, was not an explosion. It was something far more dangerous. It was a slow, quiet shift. The kind that happens when someone finally stops giving another person the benefit of the doubt. Sources claimed that Sophie spent years saying very little publicly, even while criticism, accusations, and controversy swirled around the monarchy like a permanent storm cloud. She reportedly believed that family disputes should stay inside the family. But every new interview, every new claim, and every new attack allegedly pushed her closer to a point where silence no longer felt like dignity. It felt like surrender. Then came the publication of books, media projects, and public narratives that reignited old wounds all over again. According to palace insiders, Sophie was particularly stunned by descriptions that portrayed certain royals in deeply negative ways. Those descriptions reportedly struck a nerve because they challenged everything she believed her years of service represented. Friends claimed she felt that people who had quietly dedicated their lives to public duty were being rewritten as villains while those creating the chaos were presenting themselves as victims. Whether that perception was fair or not, it became a powerful force behind the scenes. The tension reportedly intensified when discussions surrounding royal racism allegations, family divisions, and institutional failures continued dominating headlines around the world. Every fresh article seemed to reopen old wounds. Every documentary appeared to revive another controversy. Yet, despite all the noise, Sophie kept doing the same thing she had always done. She worked. She attended engagements. She represented the crown. She showed up. While others generated headlines, she generated photographs of duty. While others produced interviews, she produced appearances. The contrast became impossible for royal observers to ignore. That contrast eventually became the story itself. Because the more people compared the two paths, the more questions emerged. One path was filled with public battles, accusations, and dramatic revelations. The other was defined by quiet consistency. And according to many royal watchers, that comparison increasingly worked in Sophie's favor. She became, intentionally or not, a living counter-argument to claims that surviving inside the institution was impossible. But what truly made palace insiders believe Sophie's opinion had hardened beyond repair was not anger. It was indifference. Sources claimed that at some point she simply stopped expecting she stopped expecting apologies. She stopped expecting understanding. The emotional investment disappeared. In its place came something colder. Acceptance. The acceptance that some relationships cannot be repaired because the damage has become part of their foundation. Meanwhile, the monarchy itself continued evolving. New priorities emerged. New responsibilities were assigned. New roles gained prominence. And Sophie found herself becoming more important than ever. Her reputation strengthened. Her workload expanded. Her standing inside royal circles reportedly reached levels she had spent decades earning. The irony was impossible to miss. The woman who had once struggled through public embarrassment, media attacks, and personal setbacks was now being celebrated as one of the monarchy's most dependable. For many observers, that was where the real verdict emerged. Not through arguments, not through interviews, not through revenge, through outcomes. While others fought endless public battles, Sophie kept accumulating trust. While critics questioned the monarchy's future, she became one of the faces helping sustain it. And according to those closest to royal circles, that reality spoke louder than any statement she could ever have made. Yet, perhaps the most fascinating part of the entire saga is that nobody truly knows everything that happened behind those palace doors. The public sees fragments, headlines, rumors, leaks, carefully managed appearances. But the complete story remains hidden beneath layers of silence, loyalty, and competing narratives. And that uncertainty is precisely why the fascination refuses to die. Because every time Meghan speaks, people wonder what Sophie thinks. Every time a new royal controversy emerges, observers revisit old tensions. Every time Harry appears distant from his former life, questions resurface about what really happened and whether the damage can ever be. Perhaps that is why this story continues to captivate people years later. Not because it has been fully explained, but because it hasn't. Too many questions remain unanswered. Too many relationships remain fractured. Too many private conversations remain buried where the public can never reach them. And according to the whispers that still circulate through royal circles, Sophie may have moved on with her life. The shadow of this conflict has never truly disappeared. It lingers in the background of every royal headline, every public appearance, and every new chapter of the Sussex story. Because sometimes the most devastating statement is not a dramatic accusation. Sometimes it is simply continuing to stand exactly where you are while everyone else keeps explaining why. And that is why, according to palace gossip, the story is far from over. The headlines may change, the players may evolve, new controversies will certainly emerge, but beneath all of it remains the same unanswered question that continues haunting the royal family. If everyone involved believes they are telling the truth, then whose version of the story will history ultimately